So yeah, today, just so you know, the agenda today, we're going to go through the scripting training. Um, we will. I usually divide this into kind of three parts where I talk about the scripting here. If you remember last week, I was kind of organizing the test in a certain way, and the training that I do reflects that. Although keep in mind the commands are general; you can use them in any way you want. I just like to focus it in this way so that it kind of reinforces that idea of writing the test in that specific way. And those, again, those phases were the given, the when, or the then, or if you'd like to think of it another way, the setup, the actions, and then the validations. So I'll go through the scripting with that. I'll try to focus a little bit on when to use those different scenarios. So we'll talk about the different types of configs and tests that we'll build in ServiceNow, and which types of those tests will need certain scenarios, the patterns I see, and the quickest way to get the job done. So yes, I will be doing most of this work in Capio Mini so that we can see it and see it run. This is what it looks like here. It's just the console and then the browser here. So I'm going to switch back and forth between these. So generally speaking, here in ServiceNow, there are a few ways that we navigate, and the setup for these tests is really dependent on understanding all of those ways and being able to use those effectively at the right time. If you think about how you actually do things in ServiceNow, the first type of navigation is pretty obvious, and that's using the navigation menu on the left here. So when most, I guess, users come in, if they're not using the portal, then they will probably come in and use the left-hand nav to be able to get to their specific applications. The first thing I'll tell you about the nav here is that, and you probably know this, it's user dependent. So what you see, what's in there, is going to depend on the user. Also, how it's set up is going to depend on the user's preferences. For instance, when I come in here as my account here, I'm on the applications menu here. But I could very well likely be on favorites. As a matter of fact, it could even, depending on the version now, you could even have it be collapsed like this. So all the specific ways are not important. I guess the important part is that in testing, we shouldn't make assumptions about what the interface is going to be or what our accounts or test accounts are going to see, just because that's what we have when we look at ServiceNow. Could always be different. So sometimes you go through this and you're like, oh man, I see it here. Why is the test failing there? It's sometimes because we're making assumptions about what should be there. So not really a scripting thing, but more kind of a general philosophy is just, try not to make assumptions about what's there. So I'll come in here. Let's start with the navigation here and go through some of these commands here. The easiest way is just to go to an application and select a module. So the first thing I would do here, right, if I'm interested in getting to incident, I'd scroll down to incident, I'd expand it, and then I'd go to create new if I want to create an incident here. So the commands for that in Capio here are expand application, and this will take two parameters. Or the first one here is going to be required. The second one here, MS, is for milliseconds. And wherever you see this is used in a lot of commands. Wherever you see this, it's an optional parameter, and it's meant to override the base timeout. If the instance that you're working on happens to be slow in a certain area, it can occasionally cause a test or command to fail because the wait for that was not sufficient. So if you ever get into that scenario where a command is failing for whatever reason, and you think it might be a timing issue, if it has this, you can increase it there to try and fix that issue here. There are some other techniques which I'll show you, but for the most part, we shouldn't need to do this because the commands are smart enough to wait for the action to complete. But just so you know what it was, not wondering, that's what it was. I'll just go ahead and expand the application incident. And it's incident here, not incident, not space incident. It's got to be literally what's on the screen here. The automation Capio here is not going to make a determination in most cases about the case of the letters that you're putting in there. It doesn't know that incident and incident are the same, right? So for these cases here, we need to be specific about what you're using there. If I try to do something else, it's going to fail there in almost every case. So I would expand that application, and then the next thing I would want to do is select the module here, and this will take, again, a few parameters here. First two are required, so I need to tell it which incident and which module. I need to tell it the application here, because obviously there's more than one create new in the system here. It wouldn't know which one to click. As a matter of fact, in a single application, there can be two modules with the same name. So if you get into that circumstance, you can even pass it an index to tell it use the first one, use the second one if there are multiple with the same name. If they're not, you can just leave that off here. If you're on the favorites page here, the command you want to use is client.collapse all applications. This will take you back to the apps menu here, and it also at the same time will collapse everything, which is nice because with ServiceNow, the more apps you have open, the kind of the harder it can be to scroll through this. So collapsing them is not a bad idea. Again, it just kind of depends on the situation that user is going to be logged in. If I don't need to use the collapse, I don't, but it also doesn't hurt either. So that's the command to switch it back and get there. And you can see, so that's executed, and that's brought me to the create new form. Now I can move ahead with the test there. That's great. Certainly works. Does exactly what the user would do, and has the added benefit of actually testing the menu too here. So if this for whatever reason was removed, the test would fail, and that would probably be a defect. We'd want to catch that. But is it the most efficient way to get to the incident form here? If the test I'm doing does not call for me to go to the menu, then why do I do that? Why would I put those steps in there and introduce a potential point for failure and at the very least slow down the test to get to the incident form? There are more efficient ways here. The first thing that I like to do is just go directly to the form. And that command is client.set main frame location. That's what it looks like there. And this takes two parameters again. The first parameter, or the parameter that we need, is the URL that we want to go to. In this case here, when we talk about mainframe, we're talking about this inner frame here, what ServiceNow calls the GSoft main or GlideSoft main frame here. The URL that we care about, that we need to populate in this parameter here, is the URL of this inner page here. If you're looking at the address bar in your browser here, you'll see that the URL is encoded here as a sort of deep link here, and this is what we want, but we don't want it to be in this encoded path here. It's replaced all the characters here with these % symbols here. If you're in Chrome, the easiest way to grab this for me, there's a lot of different ways to get it. I go into the body of this form here, right click and do view frame source. And then that gives me, I don't really care about the source here. What I care about is that it gives me the unencoded URL right here. And I can actually take that and bring that here. If you're in Firefox, I think it actually has a copy frame link. Same difference there. But that's what we're trying to get to. We don't want the encoded one there. So let's look at this URL here. Actually, this has a lot of information in here. We've got sysid, which we do care about, but we've even got an encoded query for the form. We've got the Cisparm stack, which will be the referring URL, and that itself has its own URL and query here. We actually don't need most of this. If you're just trying to get to the form and all you care about is that it's a new incident, you can actually just write this from scratch here, but you can eliminate most of that URL right there. We're just concerned about going to a new incident, and actually that's always going to be -1 here. If we need to enforce a specific view or something like that, we can pass additional parameters here, and I'm going to show you in a second some of the techniques I like for that. But this, this can be, you don't just need to copy and paste it here. You can create this if you know where all the parameters are. But yeah, that's what this is here. Because we don't know what the inner frame is going to be here, it's the incident form here, but it could be really any location, any web address there. Because we don't know what it's going to be, the system does not have a built-in wait for this form. As soon as you execute this one here, it's going to, once it thinks the page is loaded here, it's going to move to the next command here. In ServiceNow, that's it, like when the page is done loading, or when the browser thinks the page is done loading, is not always when the page is done loading. There are sometimes additional things that load. It could be related lists. It could be embedded list here. So most of the commands have this built in, where they'll just wait for the ServiceNow to be done loading the page here. But some don't. This one doesn't here. And to force it to wait, you can do this command here: wait for SN render. And this has 2 parameters listed here. In most cases, you actually just want to use no parameters here, which is the default setup. And this will wait, I believe it's for a maximum of 10 seconds for the page to load. And that's after the browser thinks the page is loaded too. So the total time it could wait is pretty long. But this part here will specifically wait for that after page load phase to complete, so that you know that the page is fully responsive. And again, just to put it another way, if you've been working in ServiceNow, sometimes you load a page and you notice it's still not responsive for a couple more seconds, even though it looks like the page is loaded. That's what this is waiting for here. So in this case here, it's not built into the set mainframe, and we've got to use these 2 together to make sure that we get a responsive page here, so that we're able to move on to the next command. If you don't wait, the page may not be responsive, fields may not be visible on here, and so it may cause the next command to fail. It may also not always fail. It may be intermittent. So this is I guess the core for the main way that I like to navigate around the system here. Almost everything I generate will use this method too, because again, while the menu is convenient for a human, the automation definitely has a quicker way here. And again, if the menu is not part of the test, if it doesn't specifically say, validate that this menu exists and go to this module here, why would we introduce additional steps and additional points of failure into a test whose point is just to validate a field is on the form? Form doesn't care really how it got here. But that, this can have implications for every test. It could slow it down. Like I said, it could potentially fail. So if it doesn't specify, I guess I just try to go the most direct route. Quickest way to get that test done. And in most cases, that's going to be something like this. For advanced users of the system, for people that have been using ServiceNow for a while, you'll know that the URLs in ServiceNow are pretty powerful. You can pass additional parameters to that URL, and those will affect the form too. I already mentioned that the view could be passed here, but the other one that comes in handy here is the Cisparm Query. So a lot of times we need information to be set on the form in order for something to happen. And it's sometimes it's not directly achievable on the form. For instance, priority here, right? It's a field on the form. It definitely affects other things that are on the form here, but I can't set this directly. I know that I can set it through impact and urgency, but if that were not even the case, then I might be limited as to what I could do on the form directly here. but there might still be information or tests that I need to do for a specific, option and priority here. So my two choices, what I can do here, and I can do the actions on the form to set it up so that I get this. It might be something as simple as, I got to set the impact and urgency here to get the priority, but it could be a lot more complex. In a lot of cases, there's a deep amount of logic that needs to be executed on the form to get it in a specific state. So for those types of tests here, if I can, I will try to pass that direct value through the query here. So I can say priority equals 1, and I can execute this test. And when I come to the form, priority is going to be preset to 1 here. As long as the test that I'm doing didn't depend on that additional logic happening, in this case, let's say that it didn't, this is fine. This works just like this. I've even seen that it actually works with fields that are not present on the form. So things might be happening here that you can't see, and that might affect logic too. If it's hidden, if it's something that we can't see, if it's embedded, it's just not something that's exposed as a field on the form, we can still affect the test. We can still pass that as a parameter and have it do something here. Another example here, I can just say active equals false. I think this should work here. Nope, that's not 1, I guess. State equals resolved, I think it's 7. So I can pass that state here. The state comes in as closed, and the UI policies and everything that are dependent on that, you can see are automatically loaded, or they're executed on load here. Again, I could come into a form, it could be new, and I could set that closed state there. If the test doesn't specify, or if it's not relevant to the test, again, I will try to get the quickest route, and that may just be passing in that parameter here through the query. Again, just by way of example, if I need to pass other information in, other parameters here, that can definitely be passed into. I'll see that that value get passed into the string field here as well. So this is definitely something that comes in handy. Probably doesn't need to be stated too, but you can go to a specific record by just passing in the sys_id here. So if I need to get to, for instance, this record here, I can certainly come in and copy sys_id, make this part of the URL here, and go directly to it. So when would I do this scenario here? So this kind of leads into the next topic, which is test fixtures here. So kind of along the same ideas as this last setup here, we can go to specific records in the system that have data that we know we need to use. I can go directly to this record here, and it's going to bring me here. I can do some actions on this form, set it the way I need to, save it, and then move on. Kind of depends on what the item is that you're trying to test, and this one of the first things that I'll try to think about for a specific test is what does this test need to start, and how will I affect the record here, and what's the result of that going to be. So in some cases here, I need to go to a new record. Some cases it will be an existing record. Sometimes I need to change the record and save it. Sometimes I just need to make a change on the form, and I can leave it there. It's important to know to what level you need to do this, because that will influence what fixtures or what setups you need to do. So now will be a good time here to go over to the configurations and talk a little bit about which ones apply where. So let's do config all. Look at all of these. So here's the configurations for incident here. Let's pick up the state one here. This is the one we were looking at there. So let's look first at the business rule here. So this, I didn't really prepare this one here. So let's go through my thought process when I'm looking at this to figure out what, what state I need this form to be to be able to execute this. So first of all, this is a business rule. So I know whatever I do here, it will most likely mean that I need to save or commit this change to see this effect in ServiceNow. There are some types of business rules where that's not true, like display business rules and everything. But this one here, I know that, just by looking at it here, that this is going to be something I need to save. The setup is set to run when I insert or update. So that pretty much confirms that there. I know that the incident state has to be closed. So I need to know the condition for this, because this is going to influence, what I'm doing here. Where if I go to a specific record through the URL, if I try to set that query through the URL here, that will matter here. So I know I need a closed incident, and it has to be saved here. It does set some values here. We'll get into the actions and stuff here in a second, but there's no advanced section to this. If there were, what I would be looking at for the advanced section would be the condition here. The condition and the when to run sort of combined to figure out what the setup for this is going to be. But this is what I got here. So it's insert or update, and it will run when the state is closed. Not changed to, not anything else here. It's just going to be is closed here. So I've got a couple options here for this one. I can create a new record and just insert it immediately as the closed state here. And again, to get to that point, I may pass the exact setup that I need in the query and just save it immediately. The other thing I can do is use an existing record in an open state and close that one as well. So let's say that I go with the in this case here, that those are the two options here. The one that I will choose would be the one that would be the least impactful to the system. So creating a new record from scratch is the most impactful scenario, and it also has the added negative of requiring me to do all the work to set that up. So either I have to pass everything to this query, or I have to go to a new one and do all the setup. For incident, maybe it's not a big deal because there's you can usually create an incident and then move it along in that process pretty quickly. But for something like a change or one of the more complex applications, that definitely can be a lot of work. You're not going to want to create a normal change and move it through the entire process every time just to test one specific business rule here. So this brings us to I guess I was going to say my favorite, but can you really have a favorite setup scenario here? And that is the usage of a specific test fixture every time. So in this case here, I do go to a specific record, but if I change this record is no longer going to be usable unless I back out those changes. I can undo them manually there, and that might be the solution. But as soon as I change this record in the system, it's basically done as a test fixture. I need to undo that somehow. So the method that I use for this here, and it works out perfectly in ServiceNow, is to actually export this record right now as an XML record and then bring this in as part of the test. So right now, let's say, let's go to an open one, something that's ready to be resolved. And okay. Oh, I don't have one here. Oh, we got a new one. I guess let's take one of these here. So this is kind of the unofficial first step to this process. Is I've got to find a record that matches what I want here. I don't have one, but in this case, just to go ahead and manually do this, I can do this manual setup here and get the record the way I want it. Save it here. Waiting problem. Oh my goodness here. Oh, probably back at the wrong thing. You can see why this is a good reason why you would not want to be doing this as part of the setup of the test, because just look what I did right there. Even though it's me, an experienced ServiceNow a developer here, there's still quirks that can happen. And if that happened in an automated test, that would probably cause it to fail. But here we've got it in the right state. Export this record here. So this is going to bring this record out in this specific state here. Let's keep this. Now, what do I do with this record? For Capio Mini, which is, right, I've been doing it in here. This is going to be the first step for what you want to do. There is a directory that we have, or there's a setting in here that sets a directory that is your data folder. Basically, everything that you want to put in, want to import and stuff, you can put into this folder. And that here is in the settings under default path to save and load files to. And I just want to open that folder. And this is what mine looks like here. It's got a bunch of XML files from other stuff that I've done here. And what I would do is just take this file and just drag it in here. And I would usually do two things. One, I just want to copy the sysid from it, because we're going to need that in a second. And the other thing I would do would be to give this a more logical, user-friendly name. Something like incident opened or incident resolved. You can see I've got a bunch of them here. That way I can identify this file, but just by name. And I know what the state of it is going to be. I know where I should be using this in the test. And you should do that because you're actually going to end up using these over and over. A lot of the setups in the system are just things that you can reuse. You don't need a separate resolved incident for every test where you need one. You can just have one generic one that's set up for every scenario, and that can be what you use there. So that's the file name, incident resolve, or it should be resolved test. That's what I want to use here. So let's come back out of this. I've copied that file in there. Let's comment this out for a second. The command that I want to do for this one here to import this is client.import XML, and this will take the file path to it. This file path is very specific here. It is ctx._uploads, and then it will be the file name here. We use this one here because this is the same path that is used on the server when it executes the test. This is the same path where it will store its uploads files. So this is something we did in Capio Mini to accommodate users so they wouldn't need to change the test afterwards. So it will start with this, and then it will be the file name here. So it's going to be a / incident resolve test.xml. That's going to be the file I want there. You can test it if you want here. Just want to make sure that it can see the file. If it puts the name in there, you can see it just did that, then you're good. If the file name was incorrect, it would tell you right there that it can't see, can't see anything. Where it comes afterwards, in ServiceNow, that's not really going to be dependable. So, after this command is done, we should be trying to navigate directly to where we want to be, which is on that record. So for that, we use the same method as we did before. Just going to go ahead and set the mainframe location. And instead of this random one, we want to use our specific one here. So this will import it. Only takes a second here, and bring this in. For those who don't know, like when ServiceNow imports through XML, no business rules, no workflow, nothing is run. It just imports it and writes it to the database, or in our case, overwrites it to the database. So what this means for us is every time we run that, we get a nice, clean record in the exact state that we want. Now, if we want to test that business rule like we cared about in the beginning, go ahead and set the state to closed, and then do the rest of the actions, and then go ahead and save it here, commit that to the database. Now it's going to do what it needs to do. I don't know why it's moving it to improblem here, but that's the business rule in effect there. Now we can test the result of that. I can do this many times as I want here. It's going to go ahead and upload it again. As soon as I come back to this form, it's going to be in that exact state there. So part of the fun, I guess, of doing the automation is identifying these setups here and accumulating those and getting that stuff ready there. If there are multiple records that you need to use, as part of a test here. For instance, if it's an incident and child relationship, I guess there's two options here. You can export both and import both to start. So if I had a parent, oops, and then a child here, I can do both of those imports to start there. You can, if you're handy with a text editor here, right? If you go into an XML file here, which is the export, you can actually have multiple records in here. It's just that ServiceNow doesn't do that for you unless you export it from a list. So if you can get a list filter set up to include just the ones you want, then you can export that list. Otherwise, what I've done here, just to make it easy for myself, is I can just go through and add the two records I want manually into an XML file. Just so you know, it starts out with this is the what do they call this? The prologue here. But the main body of the XML starts with this unload, and it should end with an unload, and then within there should be a tag or an element in here that has the table, the action, and then all the fields here. So you can have multiple of these in here. You can basically just copy and paste from another file this section and paste it in here, and it will do two at once there. So it's it's a few extra steps here when you set it up, but could potentially save a few seconds on each run when you import it there. So that's the setup for bringing in a file there, and that again, I use that in every scenario where it's going to be something that I need to save or change in a system, especially for things like business rules or UI actions where I know I have to save it. For things like a client script or let's look at the client script next. For things like the client script, it will sort of depend what type of client script it is here. If it is something that runs on load or on change, then you probably don't need to bring in a record and save it. Like so, this one here, highlight VIP caller, classic ServiceNow client script here. This doesn't need the form to be saved. There's nothing about saving the form here, so there would be no reason to actually go through and actually save the record here. If I wanted to test something like this, I would load an incident. I would do whatever the action is. So this one is changing caller to whatever it's going to be. That would be my action. And then I would do my validation. No reason to save it here. Would just be making additional data I don't need. Same thing with onload. If it was an onload, it happens on load. So it's complete opposite of what we're trying to do for saving there. On submit is kind of you kind of have to know a little bit about the client script too. Sometimes in an on submit, it's preventing the submission of a form. In that case there, it would kind of depend on the script too. If it, whether or not you need to save it in order to see the result. Sometimes like an on submit might set a field, and that, while it's on the form there'd be no time to validate it. So you actually have to save it and come back and, validate that action happened. But for something like this, it does, did not actually do anything here did not do anything when the form submitted. So that, that would be something where I could just go there, do what I need to, and then just discard that new record there. Doesn't need to be saved. And that's really all there is for the client scripts there. UI policies are even easier. Almost always with the UI policies, that's something where you can go to the form and validate it and not have to save it. Sometimes there are scripts that have to happen here, and this might affect it here. It's pretty rare because people don't usually use UI policies for advanced scripting stuff. They would use the client scripts there, but that might be something to consider here. If it's just the standard UI policy here, then there's not really much that we need to do here. This one doesn't even have conditions. So I'm looking at this one here. This would just be something where I just need to go to the form, and there's no additional anything that I need to do. In this case, this is the UI policy to make priority read only. So we've already seen the effect of that. So all I would need to do is go to the form for something like this. If there were a more, I guess, another advanced scenario here, let's look at this one. Show closed code and if closed or resolved here. So this will have a few conditions here. And in this case here, and I go back to those scripts that we were looking at before. I've got two options. I can go to the form and make this change and see the result, or I can go to the form and I can have this query embedded in the string and see the result. Both of them will work. Again, it's up to you which one you want to do. I'd always try to go for the quicker one. So for something like this, I would just pass it in the URL. All of the UI policy tests that I generate will use something like this too. Just go directly to the form and set that and see the results there. So it'll be up to you to see what you want to do to test this one here. So that's our UI policies and client scripts. I'll say the hardest one, I think, are probably the UI actions. The UI actions are kind of a combination of a lot of different things going on in the system here. And, oh, probably back at the wrong thing. In most cases here, the reason why the UI actions I say are the most difficult is because they usually spawn something else in the system, creating a new record or doing something else in the system that just requires a lot more validation. So they're not technically more difficult in Capio here. These will just have like I guess the most steps after the action to be able to validate these things with the UI action here. But for the setup portion of this, it's the same. It's just kind of the same considerations I want. I want to know when it runs, so insert or update. I want to know where it runs, so client or server will kind of affect how I do the validations here, and then I need to know the condition here. The good thing for you guys is you'll be working on UI actions that you know in the system. For me, looking at a client system or going back to validate something or do a test for something that I've done in the past, the hardest part is for me usually is figuring out the condition here and creating the setup for this. If you know what it's got to be here, then this part is easy, and that's why I say here's another Sal tip. When as you're creating configurations in the system as you're working on things, if you create the test when you're doing this, then it's the easiest thing in the world. It only takes a couple minutes. You know what the setup is going to be because you've just coded it, and you probably have records that you're working with to be able to test the code as you're writing it there. So writing the script, the test script when you do the development is the easiest time for you to do it. Like I say, it's really 5 minutes. You know the work. There's not really nothing to it here. Looking back at an old script or something that you haven't written, that's where it becomes difficult. It's not even the test scripting. It's identifying and understanding what that old code is going to be doing here. So the condition is part of that. To look at this here is just a mess. I'd have to take this apart and look at this, especially because everything is anded together here. So I need to make sure that this whole setup was something that I could do here. So that part's hard. And then understanding the script can be difficult too. But one tip that I'll tell you about the scripts here is there are certain things in this script that are keywords or key patterns that tell me that there's something I need to test here. When I'm looking at this test here, most of this is discarded for me. I don't even think about most of the setup here because it's not relevant. There's nothing to test here. The one thing that I'm immediately looking at here is this portion here, gs.getSession.putProperty. Anything that writes or creates something in the system, that's something that needs to be tested here. And I'm immediately looking at this, trying to figure out what the validation would be to be able to test this. But that's the difficulty in the scripted fields here. Just kind of figuring out what's what to be able to test here. If you are going back and just writing tests for existing code, one of the hardest things for me, at least, is being able to get out of developer mode. So I may be looking at this and just saying like, this should be true here, or there's a more efficient way to write this here. That's not really my goal when I'm in here writing a test here. My only goal is to try and figure out what the desired state should be here and write a test to create that. So that can slow me down too a little bit. I have to stop myself and prevent myself from fixing any script that I see, just so I can get to writing the test here. And I say, we want to know the desired state or the requirements for the test, because that's what the test should reflect. It doesn't always reflect what's happening on the form, but it should reflect what the expected outcome should be. So sometimes we're even doing this, and we'll find a failure or something in here that was not working, old code that was not supposed to be there, and I'll still write the test as designed here. I'll write the test and I'll let it fail, and it's going to be someone else's job, or maybe it's my job, but just another time to go back and clean that up. So that's what I'm trying to really identify here is the requirements. If you're doing test-driven development and writing the test beforehand, you already know the requirements. The requirements aren't here as built. The requirements are in your story. And that's, sometimes that can actually be easier and more straightforward. You know exactly what the test should be. You don't care about any of this. But for the reverse engineering here, if you're doing something where the story no longer exists, or you're trying to write the test as built, that's what I'm looking at here. So sorry for that little tangent there, but that's what I'm looking for here. And then of course, again, the setup here and where a UI action happens it's definitely going to be relevant too. Need to know if it's going to be on a form as a link or as a button. If it's going to be in a list, I'm going to need to know that too. If the script is like a client-side script for a UI action, that's going to be something that you're going to need to, you're going to need to know about too here. Let's see, do I have one? Submit. So yeah, here's a fake one I created before here. So this was a UI action. Looks normal here, but it actually does an on-click event, and the on-click does something client-side, but does not submit the form. So I need to know here if this on-click here occurs and it's only on the client side, that may change the way I approach this test. Doesn't actually save it, then again, I'll try to use a new record, an unsaved record to validate this test. That means I can go directly to the form, do the action, validate the result, and then get out there. So those are the main configuration types there. Sorry, I took a little bit of a different path there. Is everyone clear on like the procedure for finding or understanding what type of record to do for each of the types here? The setup will depend on the condition here. If it needs to be a new record or not here, that will depend on the setup, and that really comes down to how many conditions are there that need to happen in the script in order for this script to actually run. So like something like this one here, in order to pick those out, what I'm looking for are if statements in here. Again, I have to reverse engineer something like this here in order to understand all of the scenarios here. But this is a good one here because this one is an Ajax one actually. I'm looking for the if statements here to determine what the setup of this form is going to be. And I can see here that it's got two things that are going to happen. One, the caller is going to change. That's just part of the client script that needs to happen here. And then there is an if value in here. This is not really relevant to the script actually, but I do need to know about this one here. If it is a new value, it's going to clear it. And I'm sorry, if it's blank, then it is going to clear it out. After that, it's going to if it's a new value, it will clear it out, and then otherwise it will go ahead and actually do the action of the script here. The setup for this one is, for me, I would say is a blank form. There's nothing else in here that is relevant to the script. If it was looking at other fields that needed to be set, if it's looking at the state and a bunch of different fields here, then that may impact my decision. If it's a lot of work to set up that form, if it's 5 or 6 or 7 fields that need to happen, I may just import a record or go to an existing record for that setup. If there's nothing else, if it's 1 or 2 fields here, then I may go to a new record, do that work, and then see the result here. And that's actually good. Let's use this one as a segue into the next section. Or actually, you know what? Let's put a pin in this one. Let's save this. And I've got a couple more setup scenarios I want to show you, but when we get into the actions, I want to show you this one. We'll specifically do this one because it's got the Ajax in there. So let's come back to this in just 1 second here. There are a couple other ways here that I want to show you to navigate before we move on to the next section there. And the first one here is, I guess this one actually that a customer showed me way back. I was never even thinking about this scenario, but if I need to go to a record, a new record that I've created as part of my test here, the few different ways that I could do that. I can store the sysid of the record and go back directly to it, but also just as easy and sometimes quicker is storing the number of the record as well here and using that to get back to the record here. So this brings up a new topic here, not only just navigation, but what we call the shared context. When we want to save something that's in a record here, and we talked a little bit about this last week too, the CTX object is always there to be able to store things. And I said too, the naming convention of what you put in here is really important. It can be any property. It needs to be a valid JavaScript variable name. But it can be any property here, and I try to name it what it's going to contain. I would never just say number because I wouldn't know what it refers to, and I would certainly not say num because I wouldn't even know it was a number, and I wouldn't say n because that would be even worse. So I want to say exactly what this is going to be here, and to that I can store anything. I can put it in a literal value here, so I could put in the incident number. In this case here, I want to get the incident number that's on the form and then come back to it here. So to get it here, this is moving ahead a little bit, but it is client.get field display value, and I want to grab the number field and store that. Sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit anxious about what it's going to capture, I'll just go ahead and do a console.logout just so I can be sure that I've got the right value in here. After I've got that value here, and as part of the server test, when you run this, the CTX just accumulates as it goes through the suite, and everything that you create on there will be added to it. Of course, they're definitely changeable once you do that, but it's going to create that that context and share things as we go along. In Mini, every execution here is its own thing, or should be treated as its own execution. And the context here, I wouldn't treat anything in here as saved unless it was part of the exact script like this here. I create it and then I log it out. If I want to save something or use something over and over, I'll move over to the data tab here and I'll put that into the data tab here. Whatever the value is that would be saved as part of the first part of the script here, I just define it in here. And this basically just protects me if things get closed or if I have to come back to the test later, if it got redefined here. This gives me this opportunity to make sure that the data is exactly what I was expecting and see it too. So if I don't have this here written, I would never know what was in there. So it's, as I go through these tests, as I'm developing them, I break it apart here, but if I do anything that affects the CTX, if I save something in here, I'll usually execute that part to make sure that that part of the test is good, that line is good. But as soon as I know that it is, I'll take that and I'll move it into the data section here. And since I no longer need this portion, or I don't need it now, I just comment it out. So now let's just show you here, just prove this out here. When I do this, it should give me the same result it did here. So once I have the number or something unique on that record, I can navigate back to it. The easiest way here is just the client.search global. This will, if if you put in the full number of a record here, it will bring us directly to it. So if I run this here, it's executing the global search and it brings me here. And really the only difference is, and this usually doesn't matter, but it adds this info message at the top telling me that it's brought me directly here. Unless I'm specifically trying to validate the info messages, that doesn't bother me. We can easily close it, but it won't affect anything else on the form. So navigate, if I've got tests that have multiple steps that refer back to a single record that I need to get to over and over again, this is the method that I'll use for that to be able to get there. There are a couple different ways here, as you can imagine. If I have the number, I can also do this through a list. So as long as I know, as long as I can get to the list, and again, that can be done through the left-hand nav or navigating directly to a list here using one of the options that I showed you before. If I can get to a list here, I can also search for it through the list search here. And that is just client.search list. And this will take two parameters, definitely. And the first one will be the column name. In this case, we want to look for number. The second one will be the value that we want to search for here. You can get into expanding the filters and stuff. I'm not really going to talk about it right now, but you can get into all that. If I'm trying to get to a record through a list here, I definitely want to rely on columns that are already on the list here, so that that this search field is, I think by default, only going to show columns that are displayed here. That's what I'm going to rely on here. Luckily for us, number is almost always on every single form here. And obviously we have control over these as well, so we'll know what will be on this list as far as the headers are concerned here. So we can do that. This is the same sort of thing here. It'll populate that. It'll do that. They'll do that search there and bring us back the results. The main thing with doing a search on a list that you got to keep in mind here is that ServiceNow will obviously try to return all the records that meet that criteria. So you want to be as specific as possible with this search so that your record, the one that you care about, is the first record here. If it's not, I don't know how you're really going to know where it is in the list. You'd have to look through every row and look at those values to try and find it. And that would just be, that's not really what we want here. So, if I'm looking for that number, I want to be as specific as possible. If I search for, another term in there that could have multiple results, I don't really know what's going to come back, and I don't know in what order these are going to be. If I needed this record here, again, I'd have to look through everything to know where it was. So the value that you put in there needs to be as specific as possible so that what you've got is on the top. And once you do that, once you get it into a point where you know that yours is on the top, you can do client.goToRowRecord and tell it just go to the first instance here. That's because that's really the next step that we want it to be, is just go to that first record in the list and bring us to that form. So what do I do in circumstances where I don't have a number field? Something like, I don't know if this would be exactly what I want here, but something like, I guess, I don't know, approvals would here. Approval, so the approval itself doesn't have the number, but it does have another column which has something unique here. This approval, this should be pretty unique here as to what I'm trying to get here. It's not a guarantee, right? Like change, let's see this one here. This could have multiple results, and it does here. And so in circumstance like this, I need one other piece of information in order to get this unique. I need to know the username probably, and if it's an approval, the next most relevant field is going to be the approver, and that will be definitely what I want to know, and that would allow me to cull this list down to one record. It might be the state too. If I don't care about which approver it is, then I just need to know the state, because I want to filter these out. I don't want these to come up in my result and accidentally click on this and try to approve it. So in a circumstance like this, I need two pieces of information in order to get this list down to what I want. The way I would do it here, just so you know here, if it's an approval, I'm either going to impersonate the user, and that way it would be in their approvals, or through a related list. If I need to do that, I want to sort it out by the state. And just to show you what that one looks like here, if I go to, let's go to this change request here. We should know it should have two. Let's say I want to get from this record here, change, to the approval record here, something that I need to approve. In this case, I don't care which one, but I just need to get to an approval to do it. On a form like this, the first thing I want to do is select the related list, and I need to tell it the title here. The title for the related list should just be the relationship name here, approvers, and we don't need the 7 there, the count. That's not what it looks for here. So the first thing I want to do is make sure I can get onto that tab. That's what select related list will do. The next thing I want to do, just like the regular list, I want to do client.search related list here. For the related list here, it always, most of them are going to have a verb noun style layout to the function name. For the related list, they all have got related in there. There's no way to namespace these commands, but so the command name has the element that it's interacting on there. Search related list, and I'll show you some of the other ones here in a second. Again, we want to tell it approvers. We want to tell it the field that we care about. So in this case, I care about state, and the state that I care about is approved. So I'll do that search here. Kind of bring me back here. And so here, we've already run into the situation where this was going to burn us here. State is greater than or equal to approved. And look, it's returned all this other nonsense here. So when I see that, I don't know what the result is, what the exact order is going to be. So I need to make this more specific. I need to say it's got to equal exactly approved. Now it's cut this list down just to the ones that I care about. To go to the related list record here, related list row record. It's again all of these fields here, very similar to what's on the list. Again, the main difference, I just got to tell it the list I care about, and then again the row number here. We'll go to this related list item there. After I do the approval here, this one was already approved. Sorry, I did that backwards here. I was looking for the requested. But as soon as I did the approval here and I committed the change, that depending on what I do here, depending on the action, it could bring me somewhere else. It could, if I've navigated somewhere in between or onto another tab here, when I click update, it could bring me somewhere else. I did it here and it brought me back to change request, but usually in a test, what I will do is I will simply move back to that record going forward. So instead of relying on the system history or the session history to bring me back to the same place, I'm just gonna go ahead and just search and bring myself back to that record. I'm gonna treat the beginning of the next test like it was like I had no assumptions about where I was. So I'll go ahead and search and bring myself back to that same starting record as if I was on a completely different screen. That I will usually treat it like that. I won't rely on the system stack to be able to put me in the right spot here. In this case, it was very simple. I just went there and it would be the next thing there, but just as a kind of a best practice to make sure that I never get in that circumstance, I just always move forward from that. And most of the tests that I generate through the case creator and stuff will all have that same mentality built in. Every test case is treated as if I've got to go back to that source record directly. Okay, all right. Thankfully, the next sections are not that difficult here. The navigation is the most important. So are all of those scenarios, do all of those make sense to everyone? Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, let me clear this out here, and then let's move on to the next phase, which are the user actions here. So I said the first one we're going to do here, let's go to our incident, was that was the VIP caller one here, because that had some Ajax in there. So once I'm on the form, I've already done my setup there and everything. The next thing I want to do is some user actions here. So what are some of the things that I can do on the form? The first thing, the most common thing that I want to do is set some field values. So in this case, I was caring about caller, the caller field. So I want to set field value, caller ID, where we want to use the column name here. We use this because this is the least likely thing to change for a field. And if we wanted to validate the label or something, we can't depend on the label being the same here, but we can usually depend on the field name being the same. It's very rare that something like this would change. And then the value that we want to set, we need to pass into here too. Set field value will do almost everything in the system. All the fields that you see here, everything is going to be set by set field value. We made one single command that handles everything here. So when I run this, it's going to populate that field. For the most part here, when you're dealing with setting the field value, you're dealing with the visible or the display value everywhere. So in this case here, it was able tutor that I was concerned about. That's what I wanted to put in here. And the reference fields, kind of the same as the list here. When you populate a reference field, you want to be as specific as possible here. If you're not being specific there, it may mean that your test has some variability in the test data there, and that usually means that something is unreliable about the test. So if you're finding like I don't know what I want to put in here, or just select anything, it's probably you probably want to try and be more specific there. Having said that, though, there are definitely cases where you want to just pick the first available value, and in that case here, for something like a reference field, you can do the ** and just say pick the first instance there, and that will just go ahead and press down and select that value there too. So that is a scenario that's doable. That really is only for the reference fields. Everything else pretty much needs to be specific. String fields are whatever you can type in there, but choice fields here do need to have the exact option that's in the list here, and it's down to the exact spelling and case of everything too. And I'll call this out here just because I've been burned by this scenario too. If you are trying to set a field, and I think we fixed this for option fields here, but sometimes if you're trying to work with a field, the visible text may have additional spaces in here which you cannot see, and it's not really something ServiceNow does. But if someone had accidentally hit space when they were populating the value for that field, ServiceNow counts that, and that becomes part of it. So if you're trying to set a field and you're sure you've got the display value right, but it's still not finding the option, it may be something where there's an additional space in there, and just so you can see what it looks like. It could even be something as almost invisible as that. Something like that would throw it off. I think it's fixed in this case for the option fields, but there are definitely other areas in the system where we can't accommodate that trim there and remove that extra space because it might be relevant. So some of the areas don't strip that out, and that could definitely cause issues in the test. If you see that and you're sure I've got this exactly right here, why isn't this working here? You might want to look at the source and see if there's an additional space in there. Sometimes I have seen ServiceNow do something crazy. This is absolutely insane, but they'll do something like put the HTML encoded space in there, and sometimes that throws it off too. Again, we've tried to catch and handle those situations, so if you run into that, certainly let us know, but something like that could definitely throw it off. But I didn't do it as yet. HTML there. Something like that would usually not be visible on the option list there. So yeah, as far as setting fields go, that's all there is. Client.set field value, and we populate everything in there. For most values that are string fields, it's just the string, just whatever you want to type in there. For option fields, it's the visible option there. For check fields, it's just true or false. So if there was a, let's see, do we have one here? Something like active could be, you know, just the value true or false. Date and time fields. Yep, those are great ones here. So for date and time fields here, we actually have a library called Moment that is loaded as part of Mini and as a part of the server. And so working with the date fields themselves are just strings. So if I wanted to do client.setFieldValue opened at, I could just put a string value in here of what I want. Usually that's not good enough here. You know, I could type it in there and it, you know, it knows about what that is, but usually I want to interact with something that is relative to the date that I'm doing the test. If I want to do something like that, I can use this library Moment, and the only thing we really need to do in order to get this to work is to format it the way we need it in the system. And usually for ServiceNow, it's just the ISO format, and that looks like this, something like that. And that will go ahead and type it in there. And this is the current time now. It's not the time that we just typed in there, but this is the current time. If I run it again, it should be 1. Okay, so that's the current time. The good thing about this library, and it's great that it can format it and everything, but it has the ability to alter the date in a very simple way. We can just say add 1. Let's do 2. Add 2 days, something like that. So if it needs to be in the future or in the past, we can see this should come out to the 8th. Now it's relative from this moment, and that's this part here. This is nice to have, and for the the addition here, the only thing I can say, the only thing that makes it not 100% perfect, it doesn't account for business days. It doesn't know the schedule that you're trying to do. So in that way here, you just want to make sure to set it so that it's going to pass here. I don't really have any control over this. You can do, if you wanted to, you could try and do some math ahead of time to be able to figure this out. It should have been obvious here, but I'll say it anyways. The whole environment here is JavaScript. So if you need to do any type of logic here and script this out, you can do that in order to get the correct value in there. But other than that, this makes working with the date fields pretty easy, pretty straightforward here. So what else will we want to do on the form here? We'll want to get values. So that is just either get field value, and that will take, again, a column name, or more likely than not here, we're going to want to get the display value, and that's just get field display value. That will get what's visible on the screen here, and that could have some difference here. Let's look at something like impact. That will have, this will have 3 behind it, and the visible text would be 3. So once I get this value, what am I going to do with it? I can store it to the CTX. So I can say this was my my incident impact. If I'm going to use this later, that might be something I want to do. But more often than not, what I'm doing with this is I want to do some sort of validation, and the validations are pretty straightforward once you get through the couple of weird syntax things here. The first part is always going to be the expression that you want to validate here. So this is going to get the value of impact, and that's what I want to validate here. The second part always begins with the word should. So it's going to just insert this into our chain of commands here, and then it will always terminate with some sort of function here to do the comparison. So get field value display, or get field display value impact should equal something like this here, whatever my expected value should be. And this can be a string, a variable, whatever you need in there. The result of this is going to be a pass or fail. That's an expectation, and there's a result, and this will be a pass or fail. This here, this exact style, or this, I should say the library that implements this style is called Chai.js. It's a very common assertion library for JavaScript style testing, and You know, I could spend hours just talking about that, but the Chai.js website probably does a much more, a much better and succinct description here. And you can see here that they've got a variety of commands here that allow you to do all sorts of different types of assertions here. The equals is obviously one of them, but you know, it can go much more beyond that. I can say that the other one that I definitely use a lot would be the contain. So I can say, you know, that a particular value should contain something else here, and you know, that will be something that I definitely will test there as well. The only other one that I'll call out here, and this I think was part of the welcome kit. If not, it's definitely linked on our wiki there, our documentation. But the other one that I'll definitely do, and I just call it out here because it's like not 100% apparent why this is different in the documentation, is EQL. And EQL is a deep equals, which will mean it will go through and validate equality for all properties that are part of this original expression here. So what that means basically is if I'm trying to validate a list of values, I can do that two ways. I can say that a list should contain a value, and that's great for validating the that it includes it here, right? So if I'm looking at get impact here, let's do this test out here. Client.get options impact should contain one high. So that will validate that it does contain it, and that will be true. It's definitely in the list. But what it doesn't tell me is that it also contains these two extra values here, which are not correct, 4 and 5, which were added to the list here, and those are not correct. I don't want those. That doesn't tell me anything about that. So in order to validate that a list is equal to and only equal to a specific set here, we could say that we want to use this EQL here to validate this completely. And I'll just do this one. This will fail here, but I'll show you why here. It's expecting array 5 to deeply equal this, and it doesn't. And even if I go through and put all the rest of the correct values in there, to medium and so forth here, it still won't completely equal it because it contains extra values. And this is good if I want to validate the exact list, even the order. You know, if it's supposed to be alphabetical, then that's how I would specify it here. And if it doesn't match, then you've got a problem here. You've got a failure. So those two are kind of different here. You know, contain versus equal, a little bit different functionality there, but you'll probably need to use, you'll definitely need to use contain, but you may need to use equal at some point too. So getting and setting values there, important there. Navigating between the section tabs here, also something you're going to need to do. So you will use the, let's see, I think I call it tab, switch tab. I'm not 100% sure, or section, that's what we call it. So so you're seeing what I'm doing here now is I'm trying to look through the different commands here by like using the search here. In Capio Mini, I'm typing out what I need, and it would usually try to autocomplete it there. But you can see here that it will show me fields or commands that match it slightly. Actually, here's one we'll probably need to, has form section if we want to check for that section. It's the same idea here. The tab name will be what we want to put in there, and that, again, that needs to match exactly what would be on this form here, what's displayed there. The tab will the tab name will depend on that. And I can't believe I'm forgetting the other one section. Okay, all right, I'm gonna stop fumbling about with this one here and show you the other ones that we'll care about definitely. Client.click and then the actions that we'll want to do. So there's a few. Click form button, client dot click related link. That looks like related link. I'm sorry, click form related link because there's other ones. And then client dot click form context menu, which are the three, the three types of actions that we're going to want to do on here. And these will take again one or two or three parameters here. If we're just caring about the clicking a button here, then we just want to pass it the name of the button here, whatever it was, update, something like that. That will click the button. One thing to note after these, because it doesn't know, this Capio doesn't know what this button is going to do, whether it's client side or server side or what. Sometimes if you're going to be changing the form, if it's going to be navigating somewhere, you'll need to do a wait for SN render here, and that will wait for that page to load here. The same with the related links here as well. The context menus here, those usually have one level. If I just want to do save, I could just pass in save to the first parameter and ignore the rest here. If I want to do a submenu, for instance, configure all, something like that, I can pass to configure and all, and that will go through the submenus there. You're noticing one other parameter here, and that is the override for the result text here. So or override alert here. What this will allow us to do is handle this alert differently. When I click the button here, let's just do, I think I called it submit, right? Yeah, so I have a button here. When I click submit, I just did this for just by way of example here, pops up an alert. And if I want to validate that alert, the commands, the click form button commands specifically will return that. So I can say it should equal test. Whatever I think the result of that is going to be, it should equal test. Now it's telling me that I don't have this. Oops. Oh, okay. Here we go. So this is going to mess it up here. But this here, by default, it will return that alert message there, and I can validate the result of that pop-up here just by doing this here. If I want to change the way that pop-up is handled here, if I wanted to say, don't click the button, I can supply this false here, and it would treat it as if I clicked cancel or no. It's not so much for an alert, but if there's other types of pop-ups like a confirm, this will matter. Right? If I say okay or cancel or no, that will matter there. If it's a pop-up where I've got to populate something, a prompt field, I can also put in here a specific value that I want to be specified there, and that will fill out the prompt for me as well. So this is a pretty pretty niche area there, but there are definitely, and I definitely still see alerts and stuff in systems there, and that will allow you to validate that. So there's the clicking of the form actions there as well. So let's go back to our original example, which was filling out the caller field to validate that that field is in a VIP here. To do that here, let's go through and say caller, set field value, caller ID is able tutor. Now this is gonna do something here. I don't know that able is a VIP, so nothing happens here. So if I want to get that VIP status to pop up here, I do need one other piece of information here. I need to know someone who's a VIP, and for that, I need to look in the system real quick here. I bet Fred Luddy was one, but Jared. Oh, of course Jared would make himself one. Okay. So I actually want to do this. Jared Bennett. And that selects it, and that brings up the VIP here. So that that worked, and I knew that. But what should I do? In this circumstance, what should I do after this? I need to do the validation here. I'll get more into the validation of how to validate something like this in the next session here. So I'd actually want to validate that this field has red text and that the VIP icon was there. In order to get to that, we need to know a little bit more about using the XPaths and stuff. So I would do my validation there. But the other thing to note too is that if it is an AJAX call, right? So, and then in the scenario where it's doing some AJAX, it's making a call to the server and it's bringing information back. And when it does that, that takes time. If I didn't put any kind of pause in here, if I try to do my validation, right, that it's going to fail immediately here because this, there's no timer. There's nothing to wait in there. So if it's doing something to affect the page where I want to validate that, I want to put in a pause here. And the value that you put in the pause will largely depend on how long you think this is going to take. If it usually takes, a tenth of a second here, I'm just going to round it up to the nearest second. If it takes 3 or 4 seconds here, I'm going to round it up to the nearest, to the next number up, 5. And I'm doing that here because I want to make sure that I accommodate the average time and a little bit more. If the instance is going just a little bit slower that day, if there's maintenance, something going on here, you got to remember this form is going to react to the automation the same way it does to you. So if it takes 10 seconds there, I'm going to pause for 15 seconds. I'm always just going to round it up so that I can include, I can get, more of those scenarios passing in there. If it takes an additional second, I don't want it to fail because it took 1 more second here.